Good morning, church. So, the new series on special relationship. So, last week we looked at God's covenant with Noah. This week I'm going to take you through to the covenant with Abraham. The passage that was read to us this morning, it's a very, very familiar and famous passage to us. It is also like favorite to some people because we believe God blessed us through Abraham, and we are we take that advantage through Christ, that through Jesus we have inherited Abraham's covenant. So therefore people like to preach on this, and also people like this passage. And I like to lead you through the passage. I divided this passage into two sections. The first 3 verses where God speaks, God gives his promise, or God calls Abraham. And the next 4 to 7 verses, when you look, it is the response from Abraham. Abraham responds to God's promise or God's calling. Therefore, I have titled, although this is like, the covenant with Abraham, God's covenant with Abraham, we are looking at that in a context. But I have titled it as God and Abraham's relationship. Because this, what God says, or God calls Abraham into a new life, new calling. It is consequences of the relationship that he and his people had. Therefore, I want to give you 3 lessons for us from this passage. The first one is, God calls, Abraham obeys. When you look at verse 1, God says, "Go from your country, your people, your father's household, to the land I will show you." Go from your country, your people, your father's household. These are all very secured place for us, comforts, right? God calls him out of his comfort. He says, leave your country, leave your family, and leave your people, and go to the place where I will show you, which is unfamiliar, unknown, uncomfortable for him. This is a very crazy thing, right? And do you think Abraham would have thought God is mad? Or, if God would call you a similar way, how would you respond? People have a tendency, they say, no, God is not mad. Such a thought only comes from Satan. Right? God never takes us from the security, or takes us from the comfortness. God will never call us out, or he will never takes back the blessing that he gives. Therefore, such thought only come from negativity or Satan. Because these things, God only blesses, he doesn't takes. And we follow, most Christians these days, they follow God because to acquire all this comfortness, blessings in their life. Therefore, they think he does not do anything makes us uncomfortable. If you look at a little bit of the context, Abraham already accumulated enough possessions in Haran, right? When you look at verse 6 onwards, 4 onwards, Bible clearly says he was already blessed with everything. He was doing well in life there. And God is saying, I'm going to bless. We're going to look at that. But Abraham had already everything in Haran. He was blessed. He was doing really good, and he was doing well. And he was prospered truly. God suddenly speaks to Abraham and asking him to leave the Haran, which has been a blessing. And what fascinates me is that Abraham immediately responded. In verse 4, you see, he left the place. God did not reveal everything, right? God did not reveal all the plans, everything for Abraham and for his family, how this journey going to be. Did God say everything? God only say, I will show you, just walk. You just go. It is without knowing the draft or blueprint, the plans of God for our life, it's difficult, right? Some of us, we wish on the day we accepted Jesus, on the day we committed to take baptism, or we become Christian, would have been nice if God, revealed all the plans of my life, for my entire life. We want that. We all, we pray for that. We ask God, why don't you reveal your plan to me? All your plans for my life, my life. But here, God did not do that. Even then, Bible says, he started the journey. How is that possible for Abraham to live such a prosperous and blessed and growing place for him? And he left that and he went after God. And if you look at, last week we looked at the covenant with Noah. After that, when you read the same chapter, Noah blesses his children. Only one, Shem. He blesses him. And he subjects all other two children under his rule. And he says, they will put their tent in your country, in your rule, and you will rule over them. And Terah, who is the father of Abraham, apparently come from the same descendants of Shem. And it was not Abraham who started the journey from Ur, it was Terah who started the journey. And they came to Haran. Because of the old age of Terah, they stayed there. They stayed some time there and they started to prosper. God blessed them. Here, God is the hero of the story here. God is the head of the story, leader of this story. God is actually doing behind this for his people. He wants to create a community of people for him. Therefore, he chose Noah. From Noah, he chose Shem. And from Shem, he chose the Terah. From Terah, he chose Abraham. From Abraham, God chooses his people. And it is a God's plan. Probably, I think, while they started their journey from Ur, Terah might have educating his children, his family, where we are going. And what we are going to do, where we are after. They're exactly going to Canaan, where God promised this. You will be ruling the Canaan. And this is what they were pursuing. And probably Abraham is well aware of this plan of God over his life and for his family. Therefore, he did not have any hesitant. Without asking question to God, he started the journey to Canaan. And this is fascinating. This is very important, significant to learn how God calls sometime us out of our comfort zone. As I was growing, I remember my mother used to say, I have dedicated you for ministry. So therefore, those days this used to be very common, right? For all the parents, they used to say this. So I used to maybe after I reached my adolescent age, I started to avoid this advice from my mother. I said, no, it's not going to happen in my life. I'm not interested for all this. But after some time when I finished all my schooling, it was my parents' desire I need to go to Bible college. So they send me. Today children are lucky, they have their own choice, but those time, though it was not my interest, I was landed in the Bible college. Then later on, I understood, I had an encounter with God. I understood God's love. When I first truly experienced God's love, then I said, God, now I'm ready. Now I understand. Now I'm ready to do ministry. And I used to pray crazy prayers. I say, God, send me anywhere where no one has gone. And ask me anything what no one has done so far. And those kind of prayers I used to do. And I understand then that how God's work, pursuing God's calling or life, it's interesting, and which actually prospers our life. And I can say very confidently that if I have rejected God's calling on my life, and I would have been nobody today. And therefore, I describe my testimony always in 7 words. I say, mother prayed, I rebelled, but God regimented. It was God who orchestrated, and it was God's story. He works in all our lives. He is there, and He is doing something for us. But only thing, we have ample examples in Bible. When you look at, when God calls someone in Bible, He never gives them the entire planning for their life. You take Saul encounter with Jesus. When he was blinded and he was stuck in a house in Damascus, God spoke to Ananias, go and pray for him. God said, I will reveal to him how much he has to suffer for my name. And it was not revealed to Saul. It was revealed to his servant. And he did not reveal that. And eventually we see how God used that plan over his life. And we can't really understand everything when we start our journey. But God is in control of our life. And He has a plan. And He takes us to the place, to the life, to the future where He has planned and what He wants to do. And this when we understand, and probably Abraham knows this, so he couldn't resist God's calling over his life. He well understood, or he knew from his father, or from the covenant with Noah, which has been pursued by the people, and he understood God is taking us to a next level, next way, next place where God will bless. Therefore, I would like to ask this question to you. What would you do if God calls you to move or do something for Him which requires for you to give up your comforts? Maybe you think your comfort is the best. What do you have the best? You may think that is what the Lord has blessed you. There is nothing more God can do to you. If God calls you today to move and do something for Him, which requires for you to give up your comforts. If you know God is sovereign and He is the author of your life and He is actually doing everything for you. He has got a plan, and I think it will be easy for you to obey, and we will be able to do that. That's what we see. When God calls, Abraham obeys. And today we need to introspect ourselves, our faith, what kind of faith it is. Are we ready to move? Are we ready to follow? Are we ready to do what God asks us to do? No matter what it requires for that to follow God's will in our lives. The second lesson that I want you to take you through is, when you read verse 2 and 7 again, God reveals, Abraham understands. God says, I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great. You will be a blessing. You know, God says something. God reveals His plan. And then verse 7 it says, God says, to your offspring, I will give you this land. And you know, by then they have reached already Canaan. Okay, it is only summary of their journey. We don't know what happened. But by then they have reached there. God says, after reaching Canaan, God says, I will give this land to you and your offspring. And we know this passage, right? Where Paul describes this in Galatians 3:16. He says, it was Jesus. In Jesus, this was fulfilled. And through Jesus, we all have been included into that promised land. A spiritual promised land. A spiritual realm of God. Where God have included us into the family of His people. And when you see this, when God says, I will make you into a great nation, I will bless you, I will make your name great, you will be a blessing. As I said, you know, Abraham is already a rich man. He is already a prospered man. He is already doing well in everything. What kind of blessing God is talking about here? What is really God is saying this, I will bless you. And I will make your name great. You will be a blessing. What more blessing Abraham would have needed at that time? Right? He was so powerful. Bible says he is so powerful. He went against the king of Sodom and he conquered them. But when you see it in verse 6, Bible says, immediately he took his wife, nephew, all the possessions, he set out for the land of Canaan, and they arrived there. They started the journey immediately. That means he understood something. He understood God's plan out of these 4 lines. Something God is going to do. That is, not this is what I'm having is a blessing. God is actually want to make me a head of the nation. A head of a nation. A leader of faith. This is God's plan. And Abraham very well understood this. Because God is in pursuit of doing this. And He is making His people. And He is calling His people. And he well understood this. God's blessing is about making a new nation through him. It's not to add his position. It's not to add his family. Add his, whatever the material blessing would be. God's blessing here, God says, I will make you into a great nation. Haram is not your nation. Haram is not your native. Haram is not your destiny. Although it is so prosperous to you. Although, it provides everything what you need. But my plan is to make you into a great nation. It's a special call for his life. It would have not got fulfilled unless he would leave the Aram and go after what the Lord showed him to go, where the Lord showed him to go. It would have not got fulfilled until he started the journey. You and me, just think about that. God calls us for various purposes with so many gifts and talents and so many resources he blesses us with. And he calls us. I always say, what you have, it's not only for you, it's for God, and it's for God's work, and it's God's mission. And we see that the exemplary of practice we see in the early church. People bringing their possessions and their, what they had, everything, laying it before the apostles for the common use. Bible says everything that they had was in common. So here God calls us not to possess something, rather to be the head ruler and be a leader of faith to somebody. We actually remember and commemorate a lot of missionaries, right? So in our nation or throughout the world, we have our favorite missionaries. Why do we actually today commemorate them? Why do we really remember them? Because they obeyed God's call. If they had not obeyed God's call, we would not know them. And they would be nobody. I have a friend who came to this place sacrificing a lot. And I asked him recently when I met, I said, what made you to come here? Your half of your family is there and your half of family here, and you have sacrificed a lot for the Lord. Why did you do this? And what made you to do this? And he says, when I see the people, the missionaries who went before us, we have not done anything great. We have not done anything great. So this is what looks like understanding God's calling and purpose in our lives. If we know our God in an intimate relationship, very closely, and if you know who God is in your life, and why do you follow Him, what is He for you, and you will understand, you will get to understand His plans. You will understand God's purpose over your life. And you will be able to be sensitive towards His calling. A lot of people are not sensitive. They reject, they averse God's calling because it doesn't sound so comforting sometimes. It's not so pleasing sometimes to the place, to the things that God calls us to go. If we know Him and if we follow Him in a very intimate level, we will obey God's calling, God's call over our life. Abraham seems to have known God in a very personal and intimate bonding that he would be able to understand and obey God's call. What is that the Lord is speaking to you that you are unable to understand and obey Him? God is something, He might be talking to you. You are not able to understand. Your eyes are not sensitive. Your ears are not sensitive. And you are not able to grasp God's calling. What is that The Lord is speaking to you that you are unable to understand and obey Him. The Lord is inviting us today to trust on His plans for all our lives so we can understand and obey Him truly. Our walk with the Lord will be more true, more genuine, more diligent. And the third lesson that we can learn from this passage is verse 3 and verse 6 and 7. God promises, Abraham believes. You see here, God says, I will bless those who bless you. I will curse those who curses you. All people on earth will be blessed through you. And verse 6 says, at that time, when they reached in Canaan, the Canaanites were living in the land. God says in verse 7, to your offspring, I will give this land. What a wonderful promise. He says, I will bless those who bless you. You are in a stranger land, but if anyone receives you, they receive me. Jesus also said the same word in John 13. If they blesses you, I will bless them. If they curse you, I will curse them. And all people on earth will be blessed through you. And to your offspring, I will give this land. You know the word offspring? It's a singular, it's not a plural. It's not offsprings. It's not a descendants. It's a seed. So therefore many people understand it's about Jesus. Through Jesus, we all get that advantage of being in God's kingdom, God's realm. So God promises something here, and he without a doubt, he believes. You know the word Abraham is a glory, being exalted father, right? At this time, he doesn't have any children. This is an irony there. And he would ask, later on, he asks God, I've been waiting, how long I can wait? He asked that question to God. But here the thing is, when God said this, he believed it. Maybe this will happen. He believed at that time. God responds with his faith in God by building an altar to the Lord. That is a reciprocation of by Abraham to Father, to God. I believe. That's an offering. God's promises need to be received with faith, right? If God promises, we need to receive it with the faith. You may not know entirely how that's going to be materialized, when that happens, where it happens. But when God says, you have no ways, you have to have faith. If you have doubt, we read it very beautifully. James says in chapter 5, the person who have doubt, he is like, person who, like a wind, tosses the waves on the sea. Like he is like a double-minded. And he is unstable in everything. And he goes on to say, such men does not ask anything to God. Does not expect anything to God. Anything from God. When God asks you to actually believe and take this, and this is a calling our life, and we don't move because we don't believe. We don't give up our comfort. Because we don't know how this will be. After all, it took so many years, so much of my life to acquire, to have this. And now, to sacrifice all this and go to a new place where a stranger lives, unfamiliar place. It's a risk. We say, maybe, Lord, No, not this time. Or we may ask too many signs. But here Abraham, he doesn't do anything of those. He just obeys and he just have faith in God. Right? He was in a stranger land. You could have asked, how come, this land is so big and huge? You are saying, I am going to rule this nation and you are going to give this nation to me? Is that really possible? Maybe a piece of land, a piece of plot, but not the entire nation. The God's plans are bigger. In verse 4 to 7, once again we see it's a summary of what the journey took place. Okay, journey Abraham pursued from Haran to Canaan. And we don't know how long it took, and we don't know what all they faced on their way. But certainly we can say this, Abraham's perseverance of God would have increased his faith. Because on his way he might have faced so much of challenges, so many of failures, ups and downs. Even after reaching Canaan, he faces that. Right? So many goose-ups. I look at, some of the strange things. Immediately after 7, 8, 9, 10 onwards, you read, it's so suffocating what is happening there. He had to give up his wife to Pharaoh. But here you see so many challenges he might have faced on his ways. Bible doesn't give us those details. That would have been not easy at all. Pursuing after God's call. Failures, loss, sickness, dangerous situations. But in all that, he experienced God's faithfulness. In all that, he made it through to the nation. He made it to the promised land. Maybe that made him to believe in God more strongly. But recently, in one of our home groups, part of our Jivajala church, we discussed on faith. Okay? And we were discussing how God actually, how can we believe in God at the time of loss, at the time of everything at stake, everything looks like no move, you cannot move anywhere, everything at stop, or you are at the crossroad. How can you believe in God? What does that mean to believe God? What is the meaning of having faith in God? One of the answers through the discussions came out was, people are saying, yes, I do face such situation even now. And I have faced so many situations like that in my fast. So when I face every time such crunch situation, what I remember is, I remember my past. How the Lord helped me to overcome. I don't actually dwell on the present situation. I will actually go to the past. I remember all those situations and meditate them. How did God took me through all those things? How did God, rescued me from all those situations? Therefore, I have a faith and hope in God. He will definitely give me strength to overcome the current situation. If I am focusing too much on the current situation, I may not have a question. I may not have an answer. I don't know what to say. I don't know how the Lord is going to take me out of this. How is help going to come from? Where it's going to come from? I have no idea. But definitely, this is not the first situation I have faced so many situations like this. So therefore, I meditate on those situations and thank the Lord and submit all my supplication to Him and say, you are faithful and you will lead me. Therefore, I reason. Abraham had so many situations in his life where he tasted the Lord enough. That's enough for him to put his faith on Him. That is enough for Abraham to believe when God said, I will give you this land and I will make you a great nation and I will give this land to your offspring. I will bless you and make a blessing to all the people on earth. This is a great blessing, right? Do you think this blessing ended with Abraham? Do you think this is only for exclusively it was given to Abraham? Abraham was so faithful. He pursued. He succeeded in all that. Therefore, he is now called father of all our faith. He set an example for our faith. Do you think that stopped there itself? And God calls all of us into the same calling, for the same journey, for the same work. You may not know where He is calling and what kind of work He is calling for and what kind of nation He wants to build through you and what kind of blessing He wants to you be and what kind of blessing you need to be for others. That is a kind of calling that He is actually calling us, all of us. And Abraham believed because he knew who is the Lord. The Lord was faithful to lead him to the land, and eventually we see he was prosperous and he was called a father of the nation. The Lord invites all of us. And the Lord calls each and every one of us into a similar calling, to a similar purpose. And I don't know what kind of calling is that, and what kind of move that requires for you. What kind of action, response that you need to give to the Lord, I don't know. But this is what is certain from God, that God is calling all of us into a purpose, His purpose. So therefore, we will live for that and be blessing not only to us, to the people of this nation, to everybody around us. And the Lord invites you to have a relationship, an intimate, bonding relationship with Him. Therefore, the calling will be resulted in the relationship. If you have that relationship with Him, you will be able to believe, you will be able to understand, you will be able to have faith in God. And you will not have any fear. He will enable you to understand, believe, and obey Him, so you would be blessed and be a blessing to others among you. So as I wanted to wrap it up, and I want to give you two takeaways. The first one is, maintain a constant relationship with the Lord to know your life purpose. Maintain a constant relationship, right? Every moment, every time, in all your conscience, maintain the relationship with the Lord. If you have such a relationship that's so deep and intimate bonding with the Lord, and I think He will never fail. And all that He wants to do in your life, you will be able to understand. When we don't understand is when we don't actually have a proper relationship with Him. It's difficult. It won't happen in a relationship. right? Relationship fails when they don't understand each other, when they don't live closely with each other. Similarly, God calls us into His relationship. So let's work on into a constant relationship with the Lord. The second, trust and obey the Lord. The trust and obey the Lord to be a blessing for you and others. Whatever the Lord asks you and shows you, trust and obey. Even if that creates uncomfortness, fear among you, if you know that is coming from the Lord, just trust and obey. Then you will be able to be blessing for you and for the others. May God bless these words and be blessing. Amen.